That's for you.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome. I'm Christa Wessel. I'm the morning host at All Classical Portland, which each and every one of you know about, right? 89.9? I see some thumbs up. Good, I like that. What was that? Oh, in Corvallis now, too. Exactly. All over the gorge, the coast, Corvallis. Thanks for stating that so well. This fella right here is the acting principal bassist of the Oregon Symphony. His name is Ted Botsford.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. It's great to see all of you.
As we were just walking down the stairs, we realized that the door between backstage and front of house is quite narrow, and he said, "Can I get through there?"
Yeah, it's not designed for bass players to walk through.
I imagine this is your life, though. Like, getting around with this instrument has to be a hassle in all kinds of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten used to it, honestly. I mean, I had sort of a whole system for, opening a door and carrying the bass through, and then holding the door open while I shimmy, It's... No, thank you.
And I think it makes me think of the practicalities of what car you have to buy, traveling through TSA, like what?
Yeah, I drive a minivan. I call it the bass mobile. I try to. It's not a soccer mom kind of thing, but it kind of runs a lot of my decisions. Flying is a hassle. Honestly, I mean, you see how big this thing is. Imagine, 6 inches on every side of it. That's how big the hard case is that I travel with. So I have that to deal with. Luckily, some of the airlines are pretty good about letting me on the plane and not charging me too much money. But I have to unpack it at the airport and
to show them that there's a bass inside that case. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and they run the explosive test, and it's never come back positive, fortunately. So, I have some friends who have had horror stories where they show up to an audition and their bass is in pieces, and luckily that's never happened to me. But
Can I ask? I'm going to ask a lot of dumb questions and I'm going to give you the opportunity at the end of this chat too to ask your own dumb questions of Ted. It's not often we get the opportunity to grill a double bassist on his life, right? And actually, I love these chats with musicians in the symphony. You'll find great program notes about the music being performed tonight. Beethoven's Fifth. Let's ply this guy for information about his life while we have him. So the dumb question I want to ask is, when you check your bass at the airport, they must charge you an exorbitant, oversized baggage fee, right?
Well, sometimes they don't charge anything, and sometimes they charge you $400 or something. I mean, it's sort of arbitrary, honestly. And the FAA recently just passed some legislation to make it easier for musicians to travel with their instruments, but it's not. I'm not sure it's going to,
I'm sure the French always.
Well, yeah, actually, I have a story
about
that.
The French always charge?
I took an audition in Paris, and on the way out, they didn't charge me anything. I flew out of Seattle because it was a more direct flight, but on the way back, they insisted that it was too heavy and too big, and they made me go through this whole rigmarole of weighing it, and then going back to the counter, and then weighing it again, and the scale was broken. It said it was 92 kilos, which I think is close to 200 pounds. And I was like, how can I carry this by myself if it's 200 pounds? So it was actually 42 kilos. So one of the lines was messed up. Yeah. So, but yeah, on the way out, they charged me a bunch of money, and so it's a big hassle, but it's worth it.
In your entire professional career, have you regretted making this decision to play the bass? No.
No. I mean, it's worth it for the low notes. It's fun.
Can we talk about what drew you to the instrument?
Sure. I started playing the bass when I was 9. My mom, who studied piano all the way through college, actually, she had a piano degree from Oberlin, as well as an economics degree, and she ended up going to law school after that. But she encouraged. I'm the oldest of 3. She encouraged all of us to play an instrument. My sister actually started the cello before I started the bass, and I can credit her for helping me do this because I wanted something bigger than her. So. And it worked out well. It was very convenient for my parents because my sister's cello teacher and my bass teacher were married to each other, so we could have lessons at the same time, kill two birds with one stone kind of thing.
And were you good at it right away?
I mean, I liked it right away. I'm not sure I think my first recital I was pitzing open strings, just to have fun or whatever.
Pitzing being pizzicato.
Using my fingers pizzicato instead of using the bow. So, yeah.
As a side note, you do a lot of private teaching and group teaching. You teach beginning lessons for the Portland Youth Philharmonic?
I do, yeah. They started this great program where they offer free group classes basically to get kids started on the bass. We teach basics. It's sort of getting them used to holding the bow and playing. And I actually see one of my private students here. He came from that class as well. And yeah, I have a studio of probably 8 or 9 kids, and so it keeps me busy. It's very rewarding too.
Well, part of my questioning of you is going to be, what do you do in your spare time? But that sounds like teaching is a lot of your spare time.
What spare time, right?
Although I did hear, I keep extolling the virtues of this Facebook account. It's called Musicians of the Oregon Symphony. It's kind of like behind the scenes, when they're up on stage in rehearsals, that kind of thing, and also off-site behind the scenes thing. And I saw that some of the musicians of the Oregon Symphony had an Iron Chef contest the other day. They all got together with a secret ingredient, and 2 musicians were going head-to-head, and one of them was Ted. The other was clarinetist Mark Duback.
Yeah.
And guess who won?
Thank you. It's one of my prouder moments.
I want to know a little bit more.
The secret ingredient was dried apricots, which was a challenge. But yeah, cooking is one of my hobbies. I like eating and cooking and doing things like in that realm. And Mark approached me. I guess they had been doing this competition for a couple of years, and he approached me this year about competing in it, and I thought it would be a fun thing to do on a Tuesday night, because that's our weekend.
And so, with dried apricots, how many dishes did you have to make?
Oh yeah, so instead of 5 dishes in an hour, they made it a little easier, and it was 3 dishes in 90 minutes. So I did an olive oil poached fennel with the apricot sauce. I did a Moroccan tagine type thing for the main course, and crepes with mascarpone and apricot jam for the dessert. And that was
well done. Yeah, and how can I be a judge for one of these future competitions?
Just follow us on Twitter, I guess.
Okay, good. I'll do that. Can we learn a little bit about your instrument?
Sure. Yeah.
Do I need to hold your microphone, or can you beam?
Just while I maybe.
Okay. Are there any, I know that there's a student here of Ted's, but are there any other double bassists in the house by chance? We have one. Okay, so this is going to be an education for us all. So can you tell us, is this an ancient instrument? Is this a modern instrument? Where did it come from?
This is a very young instrument, actually. It's just about to turn 5. It was finished in April 2010. It was made by a maker named Daniel Hatches, who currently lives in Wenatchee, Washington, out in eastern Washington. He worked for many years at the Robertson's Violin Shop in Albuquerque and actually got his start making instruments there. He's won several gold medals from various institutions, and is very, very highly regarded in the bass community. This particular instrument, I think, is number 39 of his, and I think he's up to 47 maybe, or something like that. He makes about 3 or 4 a year, I think. So, but it's nice to look at. Sounds good too. So.
And I'm going to ask yeah, please,
sure,
take a picture.
Please.
I'm going to ask another rude question that you can duck if you want. But I hear all these stories about how expensive it is for musicians in any symphony orchestra to actually be musicians. The instruments are a huge investment, financial investment.
Yeah.
Can I ask how much this thing cost?
Well, let's just say it's pretty close to a year's salary. We can leave it at that.
It amazes me, the sacrifices that are made by the people on this stage, to go to your job in the morning, every day. Did you have to pay a year's salary to get the equipment to do your job? I mean, it's it's really amazing. And I see a bunch of things on here I want to ask you about. One is this long black stick-looking thing on the side.
Yeah,
can you tell me about that?
I can, let's see. How can we do this? Okay, so. This is something that's unique to basses. And you may have noticed looking back in the section. I think all of us have extensions. Yeah, it's called an extension. What it does is it gives us a few extra low notes, and I can talk about how that evolved. But basically, it normally ends at E here, and then each one of these capos is a half step. So we have E flat, D, C sharp, and C. And there's one guy in our section, Jason Schooler, who actually has a B extension. He has an extra stop, and we're all a little envious of that. Because it really shakes the floor. When
Why isn't the instrument built with that to begin with?
Well, some composers actually write notes that are that low, and it makes it easier for us to actually follow the composer's wishes. I think, I'm not sure about the whole history, but I think part of the reason that it evolved is that in the classical repertoire, Beethoven, Mozart, we're just doubling the cello line, but an octave lower. So in order to fully be able to do that, we have to have we have to go all the way down to the C, because their lowest string is a C. And you'll hear that in the Beethoven tonight. Actually, Beethoven writes several notes that are below what should be our lowest note in standard tuning.
So you said that everybody in the section has these extensions added on to their basses. If there was somebody in the section that didn't have the extension, how would they play those low notes?
They wouldn't. They would probably take it up the octave, which is standard practice too. If you don't have the extension, it's not the end of the world, but it makes
You wouldn't if there was an audition here and somebody was offered a job and they said, I don't have an extension, it wouldn't be like they couldn't be hired.
No. Some orchestras require that, I think, but we don't.
There was a green rubber thing that you just took out of your bass too. What was the story of that? That does not look like any part of an instrument.
So this is called a dampit. I brought it just to kind of do a show and tell thing. I don't actually need to use it right now, but what it does, there's a sponge on the inside, and it sort of helps keep the instrument humidified from the inside out. You just wet the sponge and wring it out, and then as it evaporates, it percolates moisture on the inside of the instrument. So it just goes into the FL.
Is that how you store the instrument with that?
Yeah, you would just put it in when you're not playing.
And so you keep a what do you call the thing?
That's called the dampit.
Dampit?
Yes.
That's creative.
Yeah.
You keep the dampit,
right.
keeping the inside of your bass damp at all times.
Yeah, basically, if it's particularly dry outside, I think I had to use it more when I was in other climates, but here it seems to not be such an issue. So,
although this winter, goodness gracious,
right.
You have a bunch of other toys over there too.
Yeah, I brought some things.
Do you need an extra hand? Okay.
This is my practice mute. You can see it's quite large. It just goes on the bridge like that, and it mutes the sound quite a bit. So I actually spent a year studying in Paris in between my undergrad and master's degrees, and we lived in a 6-story walk-up kind of thing, and our neighbor was not very friendly to practicing, so I ended up using this practice mute a lot. Actually, I think I bought it there, but.
Okay, you just said 6-story walk up. I'm envisioning you walking up 6 flights of stairs with this thing every day. Really?
there was a rickety old elevator, but I didn't actually trust it with my bass in it. So, and it turns out, I mean, I didn't have to carry the bass up and down too much because my teacher had a bass that I could play for lessons. So I just had to do it, you know, when I got to the apartment and left it there to practice on, and then, you know, when I had lessons, I would play on another instrument. But
I don't know whether you guys ever see musicians come and go from the hall before and after concerts, but, you know, I see violists with their instrument on their back and cellists too. I don't see the bassists carting their instrument back and forth. How do you do all your practicing here?
Not really. I actually have a second instrument at home that I keep my fingers sort of nimble on. It varies.
He asked how many hours a day he practices.
Yeah, it varies depending on how much I have. I mean, anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 in addition to all the rehearsals we have here. So, but yeah, so I have something that's unique to bass players is most of the bass players I know have at least 2 instruments. And my other instrument is actually more geared towards solo playing. It actually employs a different tuning system. All the strings are a half step or a whole step higher to give sort of a brighter sound. It's also a slightly smaller instrument. You know, the shoulders are more tapered, and it makes it easier to get around in the registers that you would need to play solo bass music. And for orchestra playing, you would want a sound that is sort of round and supportive, and for solo playing, you want a sound that's a little more piercing and cutting, so it carries, because, you know, on its best day, the bass is still a very mellow instrument. So
I'm getting the impression that you're a pretty mellow dude too.
Yeah. Bass players in general. I mean, if you can kind of pick the bass players out of a crowd. I think if they're pretty mellow overall. You know.
You mentioned that the bass that you have at home that you do most of your practicing on is more of a solo instrument. Is there a lot of call for solo bass?
Not a ton, actually.
But you actually played solo with Portland Youth Philharmonic.
I was just going to say, this past fall, I was up on stage here with my other bass. I was playing the John Harbison bass concerto that he wrote in 5 or 7 years ago or something like that. But yeah, a lot of the bass solo music that's out there has been written in the last 50 to 100 years, just because, you know, the instrument hasn't evolved at the same rate that the violin or the cello has. So it, you know, up until that point, it was pretty difficult to play anything besides just these low notes on the neck. So technique has evolved a lot. The number of composers who are writing for us has evolved a lot. So it's an exciting time to be playing the instrument.
I didn't prep you for this, but would you be willing to play something from the Harbison or just some kind of flashy thing for us?
Let's see.
Or maybe even not a flashy?
Maybe I can. Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So we have to steal music a lot from other instruments because there's kind of not so much written for us. So this is actually going to be a movement of a Bach's cello suite. It's a little cold in here.
It was interesting watching you and sitting so close to you. As you leaned into that instrument, I could definitely hear the wood of the instrument making, not creaking noises, but I could hear that it was a wood instrument you were playing.
Yeah, it's my belt.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Which is another thing that we have to think about, actually.
Really?
You know, what kind of belt you wear if you're going to tuck your shirt in. I mean,
Holy
because
smokes.
like, you know, some are, you know, noisier than others, like this one. And then I also have to put my buckle on the side here because it's going to scratch the instrument if I don't. So.
Wow, the fashion choices that you have to make.
Or I'm just a trendsetter, really.
Right, exactly. So you've been with the Oregon Symphony for how many years?
I started in December of 2010, so that's just over 4 years. Yeah.
And he said you have a brand new instrument when you came.
I got the instrument right before I came here, and so we've sort of grown together. Yeah.
Yeah. And you came from where?
Let's see. I was in Houston for a long time. I did my undergrad and grad work at Rice University with the trip to Paris in between. And then I actually stuck around for another year afterwards and freelanced there. I played with the Houston Grand Opera, and I was a member of the Austin Symphony. You know, I would go there when they needed me, and I was still based in Houston. Taught, took lessons, took auditions, did all that kind of stuff. And then right before I came here, I actually was in LA just for 3 months, trying to sort of decide what I wanted to do and where I was going. I took lessons with some teachers there, and throughout this whole time, I was taking auditions. It was I think it was about 15 auditions before I came here. So I had some practice.
Do you have any harrowing audition stories?
Well,
I feel like most musicians.
Nothing too awful. I mean, of course, it's an emotional experience either way to work for months and years and decades, and then play for 5 minutes and have them tell you that. Sorry. Yeah, right. Thanks for coming. But on a slightly lighter note, when I was traveling back from an audition in Atlanta, I called a cab to get to the airport, and I specifically requested a van. I said, I have a large instrument. Please send a van. Don't send a four-door sedan, And of course they did. So the driver pulls up, and he sees what I have, and he's like, can't we just, stick that out the window? And and I didn't even know what to say. It's like, no, call a van. So anyway, my bass has always arrived intact, and it's always been, an okay experience to play in these halls, and it's nice when it works out. So.
And in the 4 years that you've been here playing with the Oregon Symphony, I understand you've gotten involved with a number of musician committees and things too?
Yeah, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that goes on. So I'm a member of the Orchestra committee, which is sort of the representative of the body of musicians in dealing with work rules or questions from management. We're sort of the go-betweens. So it's been interesting, sort of seeing how everything works, when we're not on stage. Because I grew up going to the symphony, and I thought it was just they just come and play together, and it's great. And but there's a lot that goes into it, into planning seasons and adhering to rules that we've both agreed on, and so that's been a very interesting process.
A lot of extracurricular time. I think we have some time for some questions. You want
sure,
your game?
yeah,
Okay.
please.
If anybody has any questions about life as a musician, oops, sorry. Hang on one second. I'm going to give you the microphone.
I notice you hold the bow in what I would call an overhand.
Mm-hmm.
And I notice on the stage there are some that actually seem to use it as an underhand.
It's a great observation. I forgot to talk about that, but
what's the difference?
Well, this is called the French style of bow, where the frog is a little bit smaller. It's more like a violin or a cello bow, The other style of bow is called the German bow, and it has a much longer frog here, which allows you to hold it this way. And there are advantages and disadvantages to both styles of playing, in terms of technique and the sound that you produce. There isn't any one way that's better or not. And it's sort of a personal choice and sort of how you were trained as to. Yeah.
Who else had a question? Oh, I see one over here. Is this your student? She can. Okay. Can I reach?
Whoa, that's really loud. I can see that you have brown hair for your bow. I've seen white, and I have black on mine. But why did you choose brown?
It's a slightly, I was just trying it out, actually, honestly.
Another fashion choice?
It's a slightly coarser sound, not quite as coarse as black hair. The white hair gives you sort of a cleaner sound overall. It's just kind of what works for the instrument and for the bow. So.
I love the nerdy questions. Yes.
How did you go about choosing your instrument?
There's actually a long line for this guy's instruments, and I kind of lucked into this one. I wasn't even in line, actually. I had just started looking for a new instrument back in 2010, and I called up the shop that deals in his instruments, and they said, "Oh, we have this one, just kind of sitting around. The person who had put the deposit down bought another instrument, and he doesn't need it anymore, and there's no one else down the line that wants it or is ready for it. So can we send it to you?" And they did, and it was great. I played the open D string, and that was that.
Wow.
So.
Love it first.
Yeah.
That first D.
You tried it out, or you sort of bought it on basic sight unseen?
The question was.
I did try it out. I played it for about a week before I made the actual decision. But yeah. Are
there five-string basses, or does the extension take place of the fifth string?
There are five-string basses. That's actually not an uncommon thing these days. And I've seen basses that have 5 strings and the extension, so you actually are able to put a high C string on and still have the low notes. Those are a little unwieldy for me, at least. It sort of takes an additional bit of thinking and study, but yeah. And in Europe, they tend to not use extensions as much. They tend to use five-string instruments to get those extra low notes. So that's sort of one of the major differences between U.S. and European orchestras.
I'm going to have time for one more question, but can you stick around for a couple minutes after
Sure.
this? Okay.
Yeah,
so if you have more nerdy questions, you can come down and ask Ted afterwards, but I've got one more here.
How many years did you practice? Practice.
Well, I'm still practicing, but let's see. I guess it's been 21 years now.
He started playing when he was.
I started playing when I was 9, so you can do the math.
Do you play the bass? Do you play the bass? Oh, he plays drums.
Oh yeah. Well,
does this sound interesting to you, though? The bass, though. Well, Ted Botsford, thank you so much for doing this with me today. And I want to mention, if you know any bassists who would find this interesting, this conversation has been videotaped, and it will be posted on the All Classical Portland website later on this evening, and that address is allclassical.org. Thank you, Ted, for doing this with me.
Thank you all.